Hey everyone, I'm KTG Bomb. Today I'm going to give you a full breakdown of upgrade tokens and how to use them. So far, I've mainly covered flight tactics and replays, but a lot of you have been asking about upgrade tokens. Beginners and experienced players alike are all asking things like, what upgrades should I equip? Which ones are good? And what combinations work best? So today, I'm going to cover everything from the basics all the way to the more in-depth stuff. The screen you're looking at right now is my Su-34's upgrade token screen. You can equip up to 10 upgrades total, and all of them are at level 5. The star symbol you see here means it's been maxed out at level 5. Upgrade tokens can be leveled from level 1 all the way up to level 5, and once you hit level 5, it gets marked with a star. I didn't actually need every single token on this Su-34, I just ended up with all of them through testing. I've used all of these upgrade tokens extensively and tested them across different jets. So today I'm going to walk you through each one's characteristics and which upgrade combinations work best, all based on my own experience as Bomb. So first of all, every jet has a total of 2 upgrade token slots available. From level 1 to level 15, you can't equip any upgrades at lower levels. Once you hit level 16, your first upgrade slot opens up. So you can equip 1 upgrade token there, and then when you hit level 20, the second slot unlocks, and you'll have both slots available for a total of 2 upgrade tokens. Now, as you can see here, there are 10 different types of upgrades, and they're color-coded. The colors are blue, green, purple, red, and yellow. Each color has 2 upgrade tokens, but you can't equip 2 tokens of the same color at the same time. So for example, you can't equip both DDT and Ideal Maneuver. Those are both purple at the same time. You can only equip 1 upgrade token per color. Just keep that in mind. Out of the 10 upgrades, let me start by covering the 2 most important ones first. These are DDT and Disruptive Flares. These 2 upgrades are what players call the must-have upgrades in Metalstorm. They're the most important and the most versatile out of all the upgrades. These are the top 2. Let me go over these 2 first. So the purple one here is called Daredevil Turning, or DDT. DDT boosts your turn rate by 20% when you're flying close to terrain and making maneuvers. The description says turning speed, which can be a bit misleading. What it actually increases is your turn rate. It means you can complete the same rotation in less time. You turn faster. That's what the 20% boost is about. So without any upgrades, your jet might turn slowly, but once you equip DDT, that same jet rotates much faster and more smoothly. So what's the actual benefit of having better turn responsiveness? When you're in a dogfight, you can rotate faster than the enemy and get your guns or missiles on target before they can get a lock on you. And when you're running away, even if the enemy is making a wide turn, you can outturn them and weave through terrain to escape. So DDT is great for both offense and defense. It basically pumps up your jet's baseline turn rate by a full 20% boost. You'll really feel like your jet's overall performance has jumped up a level. That's why it's such a useful upgrade token. That said, DDT does have a condition that needs to be met before it activates. It doesn't boost your turn rate 20% all the time. It only kicks in when you're flying close to terrain. What's interesting is that in most other flight combat games, you're usually fighting at high altitude. With no terrain nearby, you're just spinning around in open sky. In that kind of setting, DDT wouldn't do anything. But Metalstorm is different from other flight games in a big way here. Low-altitude combat is the norm. You're using terrain to hide, dodge, and engage, kind of like how you'd play an FPS like Counter-Strike, just in the air. That's exactly why DDT has such high value in this game. On the flip side, though, even though DDT is a go-to must-have upgrade, there are cases where it's least useful. That's specifically when you're not hugging terrain at all, like interceptors that need to operate at high altitude. Or stealth jets that do recon at altitude. Those jets rarely fly close to terrain, so DDT won't be doing much for them. So except for interceptors and stealth jets that mainly do high-altitude recon, most other jets attackers. Light fighters, medium fighters are best off equipping DDT. Just keep that in mind. Both DDT and Disruptive Flares are critically important, and if either of them shows up in the shop, you need to buy them. Buy them without hesitation. But for the other 8 upgrade tokens, besides these 2, if they show up in the shop, you don't need to buy them. You'll get enough of those just from what you naturally earn over time, so you won't fall short by not buying them. But DDT and Disruptive Flares are so important that you'll always be running low on them. So whenever they appear in the shop, you should always buy at least 2. Just keep that in mind. All right, next up, Disruptive Flares. Let me explain what Disruptive Flares are all about. So the yellow upgrades, there are 2 yellow ones, Fast Flares and Disruptive Flares. Both of these yellow upgrade tokens are flare-related upgrades. Earlier, we talked about purple upgrades being related to maneuverability. So how much you can turn and rotate, that's the purple category. Yellow is all about flares. Disruptive Flares is quite important, but there's too much to cover in this one video. I've already made about 3 videos specifically about Disruptive Flares. Those cover the basic concept, how to use them, and real in-game examples. I also made a couple of advanced videos, 3 total, so I'll link those in the description. Go check those out if you want the full breakdown on Disruptive Flares. To give you a quick summary of what Disruptive Flares do normally, flares are used to dodge incoming missiles, right? Regular flares confuse and divert missiles. But Disruptive Flares do that and can also interfere with gun attacks, which makes it a really unique upgrade. Disruptive Flares are incredibly useful for jets that play up close, specifically ones that get into gun range of enemy jets. You can straight up ignore enemy gunfire, absorb it, or take significantly less damage from it, so for most attackers and close-range fighters like light fighters and medium fighters, Disruptive Flares are extremely valuable. But on the flip side, there are jets where Disruptive Flares lose their value. Jets that mainly play at range and rely on long-distance missiles, Disruptive Flares are less of a priority for them. That's because Disruptive Flares only kick in when you're close enough to be exchanging gunfire with an enemy. Take an interceptor, for example. Interceptors operate at high altitude, far away from enemies. Dealing with medium and long-range missiles, that's their whole role. So Disruptive Flares are naturally going to be much less effective for them. For those jets, you'd use Fast Flares instead, which increases how frequently you can pop flares. So while DDT and Disruptive Flares are the go-to must-have upgrades, there are specific jets where you simply don't need them. Now, I mentioned that DDT only activates when you're within 300 meters of terrain. But what does 300 meters actually look like in the game? Some of you might not have a feel for that distance, so let me show you. As you can see here, when the DDT token is equipped but the purple light isn't lit up, that means DDT is not active. Right now I'm just flying in open air, so of course it's not active. Okay, let me fly close to some terrain. Watch closely. All right, now that I'm in the terrain, see? The purple light just turned on. That means DDT is now active. And when I move away again, it turned off. DDT is no longer active at this point. It's hard to get a sense of the distance from that, so let me get right down to ground level. Watch, the light just came on. This is me right up against the terrain. You can see the altitude 34 meters, 50 meters, these numbers are showing you my altitude. Going up 135 meters, 160 meters still active. Then at 205, 206. And once I pass 300, it switches off. That's the range. All right, let me show you how consistently DDT stays active during actual gameplay. There we go, the light is on. This is what it looks like to fly close to terrain, hugging it, turning through it, weaving around it. When you're playing this way, that's exactly when DDT is active. It went off for a moment, then came back in as I got close again, so now you've got a feel for how it works. In Metalstorm, you're generally using terrain to hide and dodge all the time, so in normal gameplay like this, you can see the DDT light is staying on almost constantly. When you're playing this way, DDT's effect is basically always up. Check this out. Now imagine this is an interceptor I'm climbing up to altitude. In this state, the DDT light is completely off. So in this situation, you can't get that 20% turn rate buff at all, which is exactly why interceptors and stealth jets doing high altitude recon have no reason to equip DDT. All right, that's how DDT works. Next, let me explain the ideal maneuver upgrade token. The description might be a bit confusing to read. It says, when above corner speed, reduces speed loss during turns. Here's what that means. Above corner speed refers to the speed graph on your screen. There's a solid line showing what's called the optimal speed range, which is the zone where your jet can maintain its highest possible turn rate. There's the zone above that line and below it. Above corner speed just means being in that upper zone. When your jet's speed is in that upper zone, ideal maneuver is active. But if your speed drops below that zone, it stops working. I'm going to show you a comparison clip. This side is the baseline, and this side is with ideal maneuver equipped at level 5 on the Su-34, starting from high speed with no additional acceleration. You can watch how far the speed drops during a sustained max horizontal turn. Let's take a look. Watch the speed here while I do a horizontal turn. You can see how quickly the speed bleeds off. The second number I've added is the time in seconds how long it takes. 9.4 and 15.2 are the times spent in the zone above the optimal speed range. Now for the second segment inside the optimal speed range, the baseline takes 5.7 seconds to bleed through, but with IM equipped it takes 10.2 seconds. Right now you can see the ideal maneuver light just went off. It just switched off. Once the speed drops below that range, the ideal maneuver token stops working. That's how it works. So given these characteristics of ideal maneuver, which jets is it actually good on? Rather than jets that hug terrain, ideal maneuver is best for jets that fly higher up in open air, specifically jets that struggle to maintain speed. Those are the ones that benefit the most. And the jet that benefits the most of Alice the Mighty Dragon. If you've flown the Mighty Dragon, you know even a slight direction change causes the speed to bleed off rapidly. So maintaining speed is a real challenge. Since the Mighty Dragon is an interceptor at its core, the standard setup is fast flares for chaining missile dodges, and improved targeting to reduce lock-on time. That's the default option. But if you're in a situation where you're getting constantly missile harassed by enemies and you find yourself frequently needing to dodge and pop fast flares back-to-back, then running a defensive setup with fast flares and ideal maneuver can actually work really well. You'll feel a noticeable difference too. Also, the Mighty Dragon can sustain play at speeds well above the optimal range. It's one of the few jets that can consistently stay at high speed. So ideal maneuver stays active almost the entire time, which means you're getting near constant benefit from it. Heavy fighters also have significant speed bleed, so if you're a heavy fighter pilot who wants to focus on missile play, that's another case where ideal maneuver is worth considering. But here's a question I find myself thinking about: is equipping ideal maneuver on the M2000 actually the right call? It's one of the jets I have mixed feelings about, because the Mirage 2000 is primarily a close-range combat jet. It often fights close to terrain, and you simply can't maintain high speed the whole time on it. When you're in close dogfights, you're going to be turning a lot. So you need to operate within the optimal speed range quite a bit, and as a result, your speed frequently drops below the optimal turning speed zone. And when that happens, ideal maneuver stops doing anything. Personally, I think ideal maneuver needs a buff. The way I see it, it should also work below corner speed. If it did, jets like the M2000 that are built for close-range combat could actually benefit from it too. So imagine you take the M2000 and equip ideal maneuver. You're trying to compensate for your speed bleed with ideal maneuver, but your level 20 opponents are all showing up with DDT equipped. Their turn rate is pumped up 20% and fully active at all times, while you're just trying to patch your weaknesses. If you put those two jets against each other, the turn rate gap is massive. You're going to feel at a serious disadvantage. For close-range combat jets, I personally can't confidently recommend ideal maneuver. That's my take on it. Next, let me explain fast flares. Fast flares add 1 extra flare charge to your total count, and it also reduces the flare cooldown. Normally, flares have a 5-second cooldown. The problem is that missiles can come at you in rapid succession. Without fast flares, when missiles are coming back-to-back, you can't dodge all of them with flare, so alone you can pop one for the first missile. But for the second one, you have to duck behind terrain to survive. But with fast flares, even when missiles are coming in a chain, you can keep popping flares back-to-back and dodge them all. On top of that, you get the bonus of an extra flare charge, so fast flares is especially strong when you're not fighting close to terrain, but instead flying at altitude and relying heavily on missiles. The most obvious example of that is the interceptor. If you're flying an unmodded interceptor, pushing up to high altitude is genuinely risky. Gaining altitude is great for intercepting, but when enemy missiles start coming in rapid succession, you've got no terrain to hide behind up there. It's a lot of pressure, which stops you from gaining altitude. But once you level up your jet and equip fast flares, the stress of pushing to altitude drops significantly. Even if missiles come in back-to-back, you can chain your fast flares to dodge them. And the jets that pair extremely well with fast flares are those with the flare reload special ability. Fast flares synergizes great with jets that have that special ability. The Mighty Dragon, Su-30. and F-15 all have the Flare Reload special ability, so if you're not playing them for close combat but instead for high-altitude recon or missile aggro harassment, equipping fast flares will make a huge difference. So the flare meta basically splits into two camps. Are you playing close combat, or are you doing long-range missile play at altitude? Depending on that, it comes down to disruptive flares versus fast flares. Next, let me cover the green upgrade tokens. There are two of them, and the first one is explosion resistance. Explosion resistance reduces the damage you take from missiles and rockets. Both missiles and rockets are covered, but gun damage is not. The second green upgrade is chain armor. Think of it as earning bonus HP every time you shoot down an enemy. You might have noticed before that enemy jets have a health bar, and sometimes there's a small white bar extending to the right of it. That extra bar grows a little each time they rack up kills. It represents bonus HP that's been stacked from taking down enemies. So both explosion resistance and chain armor have their own pros and cons. Explosion resistance passively reduces missile and rocket damage at all times, while chain armor only gives you extra HP after you've actually gotten kills. So for example, if a missile comes at you right at the start of the match, chain armor won't help you at all in that moment. But if you're a jet that consistently racks up kills and deals heavy damage up front, then chain armor could actually be the stronger pick for high kill playstyles. So which jets are better suited for chain armor versus explosion resistance? One thing worth noting is that both of these green upgrades tend to be most commonly used on attacker-type jets. Aside from dodging missiles, attacker jets in close combat take a lot of rocket damage, and rockets can be devastating. How accurately you can land your rockets on the enemy and how well you can absorb theirs that often decides the fight. So equipping explosion resistance or chain armor to reduce the rocket damage you take can really tip things in your favor. So instead of disruptive flares, some players run DDT with explosion resistance, or DDT with chain armor, the idea being to reduce rocket damage in ultra-close range brawls. The second use case is less common, but light fighters have low HP and can get one-shotted by interceptor missiles. In cases like that, equipping explosion resistance at level 5 can actually prevent that one shot, but for light fighters, the value of DDT and disruptive flares is just so strong that you'd rarely sacrifice a slot for explosion resistance instead. So to summarize, the green upgrade tokens are mainly used on attacker jets that need to tank rocket fire head-on in frontline combat, as a swap-in for disruptive flares. That's because disruptive flares can reduce gun damage, but it doesn't specifically address rocket damage, so that's why this swap makes sense for attackers. Alright, next up, one of the red upgrade tokens, improved targeting. Improved targeting increases your lock-on speed, so you can lock on to targets and fire missiles much faster. It also increases your lock-on angle, but what does that actually mean? You know the lock-on circle, right? That circle gets bigger. Having a larger lock-on circle is quite useful. As you've probably noticed, some jets like the F-15 have a very small lock-on circle. Head-on, it's fine for locking missiles, but when you encounter enemies from the side, that small circle makes it hard to get a lock. Locking on becomes genuinely difficult. So having that lock-on circle expand is a meaningful upgrade. And lastly, it also increases your rocket range. You can fire rockets further than before. One common misconception about improved targeting, though some people think it also extends missile range. It doesn't. Only rocket range is increased. Alright, let me show you a comparison clip. This side is baseline, this side is with improved targeting at level 5. Let's see the difference. Watch how much faster missiles launch with improved targeting, and also take a look at the lock-on circle on screen. Let's also see how big the difference in the lock-on circle size actually is. For a single missile, the difference might not seem that drastic. But when you're firing 3 or 4 an arrow, those fractions stack up and you'll really start to feel the difference in a big way. Second comparison, the ADV missile. Let's compare that one too. This side has a much larger circle, while the other side is noticeably smaller. And the missile launch speed is clearly different too. That's the kind of difference improved targeting makes, and in general, the jets that benefit most from it are interceptors. It's great for getting missiles out faster at longer distances, and it's also very effective for jets equipped with active radar missiles. That's because active radar missiles have the longest lock-on time at 1.8 seconds. It feels like an eternity. It feels painfully slow, but with improved targeting equipped, the missiles feel like they go out noticeably faster. So the benefit is very real. As for the extended rocket range, honestly, I don't think it adds much value personally. Want to know why? Rockets are quite slow projectiles. For targets flying straight at you head-on, the extra range might help a little. But against targets moving laterally, the longer the range gets, the wider the aiming circle swings, and it just doesn't connect. And as anyone who's used rockets knows, even at the normal 1.5-kilometer range, actually landing a hit at that distance is very difficult. So even if you extend that range by 30%, the accuracy at those distances is so poor you'll almost never use it. Rockets are really only effective in very close range, so the extended range stat is basically meaningless in practice. If they ever buff this upgrade, I'd rather see them increase rocket speed by 30% instead of extending the range that would make rockets on those jets actually worth using. But in its current state, this part of the upgrade has little practical value. Next up, the gun finish token. This one's represented by a bullet icon. It says when a target is below 30% HP, gun damage increases by 30%. So this applies when attacking an enemy jet with your guns. Missiles and rockets are not included. Once the enemy's HP drops below 30%, your gun damage gets a 30% boost. Looking at how other players use gun finish, I see it most often on jets with strong gun damage like the MiG-23 or M2000. Usually it's when you feel like you're not finishing kills cleanly with guns. Like when you leave enemies on slivers of HP and just can't close it out. In those moments, equipping gun finish will definitely give you that extra damage punch. That's a real advantage. That said, personally on the jets you'd consider running gun finish on, is it really worth dropping DDT or disruptive flares to make room for it? That's the real question you have to ask yourself. Personally, I think investing in better maneuverability and evasion is the stronger play, and just accepting that your gun damage won't be perfectly optimal. I'll let you think about it, though. If you're asking which one you'd drop between DDT or disruptive flares to slot in gun finish, you'll probably find yourself in the same dilemma as me. So gun finish can be useful in certain situations, but it needs more thought before committing. If it were to have enough merit to justify dropping one of the two core upgrades, I think it would need a bit more buffing before it becomes widely used. Alright, next let me explain the thrust booster, one of the blue tokens. As I mentioned, blue tokens are related to your jet's acceleration and propulsion, and thrust booster specifically activates when your fuel drops below 50%, boosting both your top speed and acceleration. So the activation condition is fuel below 50%. You can see your fuel on the right side of the screen. Once it drops below the halfway mark, your acceleration suddenly kicks into a higher gear. The thrust booster's effect is quite noticeable in actual gameplay. For jets like the Raptor, or when you're using a jet in air superiority mode, or any situation where fast, aggressive maneuvers are needed, equipping thrust booster instead of disruptive flares can actually be a solid choice. Jets like the Su-33 that have sluggish acceleration, or jets that are fast but could use more snap in air superiority scenarios, thrust booster is a genuinely useful upgrade for those situations. But let me give some examples of where thrust booster doesn't deliver much. The first is attacker jets. Why doesn't it work well on attackers? Well, attackers do have low acceleration, sure, but their fuel tanks are typically around 30 seconds. So for thrust booster to even activate, you need to burn through more than half the tank, meaning 15 seconds of fuel needs to be gone before it kicks in. Meeting that condition is a bit awkward on attackers, and to make it worse, attackers are naturally slow in both speed and acceleration, so even when the booster does fire, the speed gain isn't that impressive. So thrust booster isn't great for attackers. And the second case is the MiG-19. The MiG-19 has a tiny fuel tank. I think it's around 8 to 10 seconds of fuel. It's extremely small, so the fuel drops very quickly. That means you'll hit below 50% fairly often, but the total amount of fuel you actually get to use in the boosted state is just too short. So even with thrust booster equipped, the effect isn't very impactful. And the MiG-19 already has a naturally high base acceleration. It's a jet that can maintain plenty of acceleration even without the booster. To summarize for attackers and the MiG-19, I personally don't recommend thrust booster. That's my personal take. And the last one, efficient afterburner. This buff reduces how much fuel you consume. So the natural thought is this should be most effective on jets with small fuel tanks, right? A fuel efficiency upgrade should help jets that run out of fuel quickly. The jet with the smallest fuel tank in Metalstorm is the MiG-19 at 10 seconds. It runs out super fast. But think about it carefully. This upgrade reduces consumption by a percentage. The MiG-19 has a 10-second tank. A 20% reduction means it becomes 12 seconds, just 2 extra seconds. Can you even feel that difference? The percentage scaling actually works better for jets with large tanks like an attacker with 30 seconds of fuel. A 20% reduction brings that up to 36 seconds, which is a meaningful gain. But for the MiG-19 with its tiny tank, even a 20% reduction only adds 2 seconds. That's barely anything. So the design here feels a bit off to me. Because the jets that need this upgrade most are the ones with small tanks, but the percentage-based mechanic means it helps large tank jets more. So, in my opinion, out of all 10 upgrades, efficient afterburner is the least popular and the least effective. Think of it as something you slot in temporarily when you've got a spare slot and nothing better to put in it. So if your goal is to increase acceleration or maneuverability, thrust booster is significantly more effective than efficient afterburner for that purpose. That's how I'd summarize it. All right, to wrap up, let me show you how Bomb has all his level 20 jets set up. Almost all of them are running DDT and Disruptive Flares. Like I said earlier, with a few exceptions for interceptors and specialty cases, it's DDT and DF across the board. Intruder DDT and DF. MiG-19 DDT and DF. Delta Dart DDT and DF for Disruptive Flares, just to be clear. Phantom DDT and DF. Su-25 DDT and DF. Sometimes on attackers, I'll swap in explosion resistance instead of Disruptive Flares. Tornado DDT and DF. Tomcat improved targeting and fast flares. Since it's an interceptor, the setup is built around faster lock-on speed and using fast flares for missile evasion at altitude. F-16 Fighting Falcon DDT and DF Thunderbolt DDT and DF. Strike Flanker. I'm not entirely sure why I set it up this way, but it's running thrust booster and fast flares. The Strike Flanker plays at high altitude rather than close combat, so I didn't equip DDT or Disruptive Flares since it's focused on missile evasion at altitude. I went with fast flares. And the Strike Flanker has sluggish acceleration. So anytime I start turning, the speed bleeds rapidly, but instead of compensating with ideal maneuver for turn maintenance, I chose to address it by boosting acceleration. So the Strike Flanker is running fast flares and thrust booster. For the C Flanker, it's DDT, though I sometimes swap between thrust booster and Disruptive Flares depending on the situation. When I want a bit more snap during air superiority engagements, I'll go thrust booster. When I'm doing close combat, I'll switch to Disruptive Flares. So unlike the Su-30, the C Flanker is built around close combat, so I paired DDT with the appropriate second upgrade. For the Su-34, it's DDT with DF, or DDT with explosion resistance, either works. Raptor is DDT with DF as well, or fast flares if you're playing at close combat. DDT and DF is fine. But if you're doing high-altitude missile evasion play, then fast flares paired with improved targeting or another combo works too. The Raptor's optimal setup can shift a bit depending on how you like to play it. And for the Mighty Dragon, like I mentioned, the go-to is improved targeting and fast flares. Alternatively, you can run ideal maneuver and fast flares. That covers the main setups. Today's video ran a bit long, but we went through all the upgrade tokens. One question I get asked a lot goes like this: I fly the F-16 Falcon, since the F-16 already has one of the best turn rates in the game. Wouldn't it be better to equip something that covers its weaknesses instead of DDT? Things like gun finish, for example. And that reasoning has merit. But like I said earlier, try it out in practice and you'll feel it clearly. Have both players fly the Falcon, but you don't equip DDT while your opponent does, then engage each other. Once you start losing the turning edge and getting your 6 o'clock taken because of that turn rate gap, you'll immediately understand why DDT is the standard choice, even for naturally agile light fighters with high base turn rates. You still need DDT to get that extra turn rate on top, otherwise you simply can't compete against opponents who are already upgraded. Because the reason DDT and Disruptive Flares became the community standard is not arbitrary, there's a clear reason for it. Use that as a reference point, but also feel free to try different combinations on whatever jets interest you. Try them out. Feel the difference, and if you find a style that suits you better, go for it. Building your own unique playstyle is part of the fun too. That's everything on upgrade tokens for today. Thanks for watching such a long video. This has been Bomb from KTG. See you next time.